As an artist, I'm a big fan of the process, all that time, effort to achieve our final completed piece. Through the process of creating the Wolfman, I had taken many pictures and videos documenting my journey. I never had the intention of making a video, but after completing my introduction to Vick Kumar's studio, I thought, why not? Let's just keep on going. The foundation of my sculpture consisted of aluminum foil and masking tape. In retrospect, I should have used the wire armature, as later the weight of the sculpture added stress to the ankles, resulting in cracking. This was the beginning times of COVID-19 pandemic. My art stores had limited stock, and the regular Sculpting was all that was available. Step one was for me to build up the body, the legs, and the feet, and start working on the little claws too, and getting that detail in. Full disclaimer, my sculpture is based on an Ace of Clay YouTube video titled Sculpting a Werewolf from Polymer Clay. I will put a link to his video in my description. This video was the perfect template for creating my piece, as it contained the subject matter that I was very much interested in and a style that was not too far from my own. This was my first time using Sculpty product. I did find the regular Sculpty, this white version, soft and proved challenging when attempting finer details. In my later sculpts, when products had restocked on store shelves, I found that Super Sculpty Original, the pink color, was the better option. You can see I started sculpting the rips in his pants. However, the soft polymer clay proved challenging. I was unable to sculpt the fine details in my head, so I decided to abandon them. With the addition of a few folds and wrinkles in his pants, it was now time to work on his arms. This time around, I did use a wire armature, pushing through the aluminum body and bending them to produce a pose that I was happy to use as my foundation. However, before I started the arms, it was a trip to the oven to bake and finalize everything to this point. Returning to the aluminum foil and masking tape, providing some thickness before applying the polymer clay. Borrowing the same technique from Ace of Clay, I used one of my shaping tools and I pressed down on the clay to create a fur appearance. There was still work to do with the shoulders and forearms, but I decided to start building the hands again with wire, aluminum foil, and tape. I may have gone a bit overboard with the heavy-duty arm armature, but I was afraid that simply sculpting the fingers may snap off at a later stage in my process. So I repeated the process and used it again for the right arm. A quick 360 to inspect my work, and I will admit that I was very happy with the results so far. Now it's time to cover the armature with the polymer clay and achieve the basic form of the hands and the upper arms. My next stage was the details of the hand, defining the knuckles, finger joints, claws. I always like to draw hands, and sculpting them was just as fun. Then, of course, another 360 just to inspect my work and off to the next stage of my sculpture, which would be the fur covering his upper arm. Continuing with the same fur technique, we now use it on his hand. I love this effect, 2 layers, one on top of the other. Just in time, Super Sculpty Firm was now available at my craft store. The extra firm clay was ideal for the next stage of my sculpture, the head. This was my first time using Sculpty, and in this case, the firm version. And it did take a few tries before I was comfortable in the direction I was going. After I was comfortable with the basic placement of the mouth and teeth, I started to focus on the muzzle and nose. And then it was off to his ears. Yes, folks, reference was required, or maybe just a nice cool background. After smoothing out the head with this brush, I used a fine ball tool to highlight the fine facial fur details. Alright, time to place the head on the body for another 360 inspection. Yes, you can see I'm happy with the results. Time to save my work and place it into the oven for another bake. Final stretch, guys. It's time to connect the head to the rest of the body by sculpting a mane. Working around the head and the ears and using the same technique I did for the rest of the body. There it is, folks. My sculpture is all complete. And ready for the oven one last time, with me patiently waiting by the oven door. There it is. Love the size, love the weight. One last look at the finished sculpted Wolfman. This is my first sculpture and I'm very pleased with the results. Now it's time to paint. The base color for the face, hands, and feet was a light gray. For the fur, I used a darker gray. I'm using Folk Art brand paint with a matte finish. With so much texture, I'm going to use my table to ensure that the paint is all in those little grooves. I don't want to see any white. Somebody here's thirsty. So far, so good. Let's move over to the pants. I'm going to start using a brown as the base color. With a finer brush, I'm going to go in with black for the nails on his hands and toes. I used the light gray to highlight over the dark fur, and black diluted in water for a wash over the hands. At this point, the paint on the body was complete, and now I was mentally preparing for the head. For the eyeballs, I decided on yellow and green, and highlights of red and pink for its mouth, a nice contrast from the gray. My Wolfman is complete, extremely happy with the results. However, this project is not yet finished. One more step, the base. I started with a wood plaque. I used a lighter nozzle, the one used for camping and lighting barbecues. It was the perfect stand. I followed up with wire for the weight grabber. I also recycled the plastic paint brush protectors. It was perfect for protection of my sculpture against any rubbing. I didn't want a black base, so I decided to glue sawdust to add texture. I also went with bright green paint, another contrast against the gray. I finished with black around the sides and some dry brushing on the top to add highlights. I had this laser engraved plate custom made, applied it to my base to make it look official. A phrase my mother would say to me when I was young showing her my art: it means nothing if it's not dated. That phrase has imprinted on me and I share it with my kids today. There it is, folks, a documentation of creating my Wolfman sculpture. It is always important to snap a few pictures, take some videos documenting the process. As our math teachers say, show your work. I'm very pleased that I can share my work and my journey with you. Personally, I just love to draw and sculpt, but it is important to set aside some time for these administrative tasks. It is worth it, and you will pat yourself in the back that you did. Thank you everyone for taking the time to watch this video.